Hello, this is Celeste here from Aguascalientes, and you're watching Teacher Learning Cast with Piry Herrera and Benjamin Stewart.
Hello and welcome to Teacher Learning Cast, episode number 16, this day, June 30th, 2018. My name is Benjamin Stewart, calling from beautiful Aguascalientes, Mexico.
Morning, everybody. This is Piry Herrera, also here in Aguascalientes. Today, Saturday, June the 30th, and getting ready for a short term of vacations here at work, but still working on the last things before taking this little time for resting. Benjamin, how are you today?
Excellent. Yeah, we're just summing up. Things have been kind of crazy this month, as they normally are at the end of the semester. We've got one more week of class, not really of classes, but administrative work before we go on a 2-week vacation. But planning on keeping up with Teacher Learning Cast. So hopefully those of you who are going on vacation can catch us either in the live broadcast or in the recordings. We're going to try to continue producing content related to teaching and learning. And so feel free to join us and give us feedback. Let us know what you'd like to see. We're going to continue with the Facebook page. So I think that's one of the best ways and easiest ways to reach out to us if you want to provide feedback or even be part of the show. We're always looking for teachers who want to be part of the broadcast, come in, and we've done that in several occasions in the past and really have enjoyed it. So let us know if you want to be part of the broadcast. You can find us in Facebook and Teacher Learning Cast if you do a search there. In fact, I'd like to spend just a second here to show the viewers, our audience, a slightly different way that you can access some of the content that we've been producing. This is episode number 16, so we've had 15 different recordings of different information related to teaching and learning, and we now have a new way that you can access this information beyond just accessing it through YouTube, through the playlist. So if you go into the Facebook page, there's a post dated June 22nd, and there is a post for Trello. In fact, today I'm going to be talking more specifically about Trello, but we created a board in Trello for you to have an alternative way of viewing some of the videos, in fact, all of the videos that we've created thus far. So here, this is a public board, and in Trello here, we've got it listed by subject. So currently, and these could be subject to change. This is just kind of how it has emerged so far. But we've got different topics as lists here. So we have one for learning theory, teaching practice, material design, networking philosophy, and trying to scroll over here, and Tech Talk, which is what we're going to be talking about today in episode number 16. But this is just another way that you can access these cards and then ultimately the links that go into the video. So if you click here, this will take you to this video in YouTube. All right, so this is a post, just a page that I wanted to share with you. And since all of this information here is public, you can join this and leave comments as well. So this is another way that you can leave comments very specific to each of the episodes. And so I wanted to share this with you. And again, you can access this via Facebook or page Teacher Learning Cast. And feel free to favorite this Trello board so that you can have easy access to all of the content that we're producing.
Right, really looking for new ways to organize this idea and keep in touch with everybody. We have had some interesting guests in some of the sessions, and we will try to keep on bringing people so you can have different opinions and different comments about different situations in classes. And Benjamin is always looking for different technologies to support everything we are doing, everything he does in his daily activity also. and it's really interesting to work with him and see all these new ideas coming into action. Last episode, we had talk about universidad. Is that right, Ben?
Yes,
Can you?
we did. We had a
Right.
talk. Yeah, we had a great talk. In fact, episode 15, where we talked about the music model, is very interesting. How to go about motivating
Right.
students, and I remember coming up with a lot of additional topics that we could use to kind of expand on those ideas to look at specifically. I'm thinking differentiated instruction, how to go out and give more agency to learners. But it was a really interesting talk with Peter Riley and also the great team there at Universidad Panamericana here in Aguascalientes, where they've had many teaching conferences and had just a great talk with them. And it's good to see that there are, universities or organizations of teachers really working together along with their students to produce these wonderful learning, professional development opportunities for all teachers here locally in Aguascalientes. So it's this is precisely the type of things that we're looking for, that if your school, your institution are doing some really good things with the promotion of teacher development or just with their students, these are exactly the types of topics that we want to learn more about. And this will give you an opportunity to share kind of what you've been doing and promote what successes and even challenges that you've had as well. So yeah, it was a very interesting talk that we had with Peter Riley with his research. I think he's going to be publishing some articles related to their findings. So I look forward to seeing that, and hopefully maybe we can have him back on and discuss more in depth some of his research findings that he ultimately now will be publishing.
Right. The interesting thing about all of this is that we are having contact with people, as Benjamin mentioned, that it's trying new things and different interventions in the classrooms to adapt these new trends in education, in teaching, and also in technology, which is today's topics for us. Today we want to discuss a little bit about different aspects in technology and things that we are planning to do, things that have happened in the classroom. And I don't know, Ben, where you want to start today?
Yeah, so we're going to talk, it's going to be kind of geeky in the sense that we're just going to be talking about technology.
Right.
But we want to share a couple of things. Petey and I have the benefit of also having our office space very close to each other. So we find invariably a lot of opportunities just to kind of throw ideas back and forth about what we're doing with technology. So hopefully you have someone that you can kind of bounce ideas off from as well. But this semester, as we're finishing this semester and thinking now in terms of next semester, the process that I go by every semester is I try to look at my current experiences and see if it's working, and invariably every semester I find kind of areas where, things may have gone well, others areas where maybe I would like to try something different for the next semester. And so this semester is no different. And one of the things that I wanted to share today with you is this technology, this of Trello, this site, this service that they are providing. But I wanted to share with you first kind of the thought process that goes through my mind. And I think this is a thought process that probably we all might go through before we even decide on the technology, because I don't want to propose that I go about it by just going into and trying technology just for the sake of trying it. There's a lot of things that go into the decision-making process before I think one ultimately decides in the technology. And I wanted to share just a few minutes with you this image, this graph that I created to try to help articulate some of the thought processes or the decisions that I make before I decide ultimately on the technology that I want to use. So here in this image, in the middle of this really are the theories, right? So it's all based on the theories that we either espouse, those are the ones that we promote and talk about, and the ones that we actually use, the in-use theories. So the theories really are, and I use the word theories in the plural because I think ultimately it's more about using a variety of different theories, whatever those theories are. There's seldom maybe just one theory that we all are using, that there's probably a combination of theories, right? So regardless of what those theories are, there are certain theories that are going to be part or provide the basis of the learning experience that you find yourself in. Now, based on those learning theories, there are really two main decisions here that I think that we need to ask ourselves. And the first is the type of communication that will be involved in how students communicate within themselves, and also the way that you, the teacher, will communicate with the students. The second being the delivery of content. So thinking in terms of communication, really, the idea is, how do you want your students to communicate? Will it be in real time, that is synchronous types of communication? That is, I think, the easiest example, when you're in face-to-face class, you're actually talking to your students in real time. That would be an example of a synchronous communication. Asynchronous would be communication over time. So maybe that is either via email or some sort of forum, or any type of communication, even with Facebook, if you're posting over the course of a day or a week certain topics. Twitter, for example, those are to various degrees examples of asynchronous communication or communication over time. So when you're thinking about the course content, the types of activities that you're going to employ in your class, this is a very important decision that you're going to need to make, and one that you need to decide on even before you start to think about what technologies then will facilitate those forms or those types of communication. Then the second being content delivery. Now, when I use the word content, I really look at it in two different ways. If you think about it in terms of input versus output, the content, usually we think of it as being input types of content, right? So if it's a book, if it's a website, article, whatever it is, it serves more in terms of some sort of input that the students will rely on to gain some sort of knowledge or skill. But I also want us to think about content as being output driven, right? So some of our students might actually produce content that then serves as input back into the learning process. So it becomes this cyclical process of content possibly serving as an outcome or output, and then also kind of recycling back into the input cycle. So think of it in terms of delivery of content. How do we want to deliver in our classes this content, both in terms of input and in terms of output or outcomes, if we're looking at how students are producing outcome? I think we could also look at content, any content that we, the teacher, create as well for the course. But really, we're looking at what technologies will facilitate, how do we want this to deliver, to be delivered into the classroom. And I know this image is under the heading flipped learning, or the flipped classroom. And we had a great session with Kim Bauer on flipped learning. But really, this is a discussion of flipped learning in essence, right? When we look at the different types of technologies that we're going to be using to make these decisions about the types of communication and the forms of delivery of content, this is really the essence of flipped learning. This image, or this shaded area here, represents the current interactive learning environment. The key word here is the current, that is what's happening now in the classroom in terms of teaching and learning. And it is basically the reality of where the teacher and the students are at that particular moment. This dotted line here represents the goal or the objective of the learner in terms of some ideal self. So if we think of it in terms of selves here, right, this is the current self, the interactive learning environment. This dotted line could be the ideal self. So this is very personal and individualized, how the student looks at their learning experience and what goals that he or she wants to achieve. We also have this ought to self, and this is interesting because the ought to self would be where teachers maybe, for example, in formal education, have expectations of where students need to be. So you have this ideal self and this ought to self, which could be the same, but it could also be different. It could be conflicting even at times, depending on the situation. So when we're thinking about the technologies to be used for a particular class, I think one of the things we need to look at is this difference between the ideal self, the ought to self, and also the collective goals, if we're looking in terms of maybe even students working together in groups or teams, and they have maybe particular group goals that they need to achieve. So this idea, how we close this gap between the current interactive learning environments and these possibly 3 different types of goals that are part of the learning experience. These are all very important considerations when looking into what types of technology that you want to use to help facilitate closing this gap. Finally, the last decision, and I think probably the most important, and one that I wrestle with a lot myself, is this difference between closed and open learning environments. So how open or closed do we want to make the learning experience in our class, right? So even when we look at students creating content, is that going to be made available publicly? Is this going to be made available only to the class? Is this going to be made available only to the institution only? Maybe other classes and from other semesters. All of those types of decisions need to be part of the process of determining what kind of technology one will ultimately use as a teacher. So I know there's a lot here, but basically the point here is that there are certain decisions we need to make when we decide on what kind of technologies we want to use. And this past semester, January, June of 2018, I used Canvas. And I'm not going to go into Canvas a lot, but I will say that Canvas is a wonderful learning platform. It's a learning management system, an LMS. And it is very useful if you're looking for something that is a complete system, that it's a complete platform where you can maintain grades, you can have discussions, you can have individual pages, assignments, everything can reside in this one space where students can access it using their own mobile technology. Since Canvas has a lot of good apps that they can use, there are no problems having students access their work and all of the content for the class in Canvas using their mobile apps, both for cell phones and also for tablets. So this is kind of where I'm coming from. And one of the reasons, I think one of the main reasons why I'm looking and considering something different from this platform is that I have a lot of writing classes, right? So a lot of my students are using Google Docs to share with me where I provide feedback. And in this platform, what I had my students do was they would work in Google Docs and then they would copy and paste certain assignments into Canvas as a grade. And it worked. I didn't really find particularly any problems with that per se, but I think it was just another additional step students had to go through and to submit an assignment. So one of the reasons why I decided on looking at other forms of technologies, I wanted to try to simplify that process, try to cut down the steps and having them have to first join Canvas and throughout the whole semester go back and forth between copying and pasting certain assignments into 2 different places. So this was, and the final thing is I wanted to have this as open as possible. This class is open because Canvas, which is part of infrastructure.com, they maintain these courses openly, which this course is completely open. So you can go to their Commons area and access all the open courses that they have. And this course that I created for my students was one of these courses that was made public to everyone. So so that was one of the kind of the rationale for moving from Canvas to Trello. Here is Trello, and this is the main page with the boards. Let me go back here first to show you the home page. Now, I've only spent a week with Trello, so this discussion today is just to kind of give you a very brief description of kind of where I'm at with Trello, and I'm not going to dive too deep because first of all, I'm not an expert in Trello, but I want to show you how easy it is really to, just after a week, to how you can bring in certain content for your course and actually have your whole course on Trello. So here, this is the home page, which basically just provides a quick view of highlights of any activity that has taken place in any of the boards that you've had. So here I have the different boards, and in fact, the board that I just showed you just a few minutes ago with Teacher Learning Cast, that was one of the boards. But I'm going to show you an example of a composition, which is a course I'm going to teach next semester for third to fifth semesters, students who are studying a BA to be English language teachers. And this composition course is a 16-week course, and it's divided into 4 units. Units 1 and 3 are academic essays. Units 2 is a business type of unit where students are writing business correspondence like business letters and formal emails and so on. And the 4th is creative writing. 4th unit is creative writing, where they're going to be creating poetry for the most part. So here you'll notice in this board that I've divided all of the lists. These are lists by weeks. Okay, so we're looking at one board, and each of the lists I've divided into weeks, and each list have what's called cards. Okay, so here we have all of the 16 weeks for the course divided into different lists. And again, you'll see, because I've just started, there's some, I have more content in certain weeks than others, and this is just because I am still working on this. This is going to be for next semester, August of 2018. So here you'll notice that I have this set up in different weeks, and what I really like about the Trello platform here is that you have these labels, and I want to show you here under menu and labels. These are the labels that I'm currently considering for this course, and of course you can add labels and change the names and colors and all of that, but what I really like about this is coming up with a good labeling system where I can identify each of these cards. Each of these cards is going to be either an activity, or it could also be content. It can really be anything that you want it to be, but I like how I can label these different cards, and over time I can get a bird's eye view, right, of the different types of activities and discussions that I'm having with my students, so I can see if I have kind of a balanced approach. I know that this pink color are for strategies, so I can look at my scheduling throughout the week to see, okay, do I have enough strategies that I'm working with my students so that they can have kind of a metacognitive approach to their learning throughout the course. I know that black is for assignments, that they're going to receive a grade, right? So I can kind of see from a bird's eye view when they're going to be graded, and they can see this as well as they become more familiar with this labeling system. And so this is really, the green here, it represents orientation. That is kind of where there are activities that kind of help orient them as to where they've been in the past and where they're going to be going in the future, and so on. So again, this labeling system I think is really nice because it is adaptable, of course, and you can tailor it to your own liking depending on your own course. And so the idea with Trello, with these cards, is that as the course goes, because this is just the planning, and as you know, PD, it's very common to have changes as you are implementing your class, and so what I really like about this is it's very easy to maneuver and change these cards. You can change them from different weeks to different in different lists. You can move the cards to different boards if you want. So let's say I open up this card, and this is exactly what the student's going to be seeing as well. You might have a description here, but you can move these to different boards, different lists. It's very adaptable in that sense. Whoops, didn't want to do that. And so that's what I really like about this. You can create a calendar and have a calendar view for students, especially for like assignments. And I don't have, like here you'll see a few now that they start to pop up. Any of these cards, you can set dates, and those dates then will appear in the calendar. So this is another view that they can access. And one of the main things I really like about Trello is because although we're looking at Trello now on a desktop, the benefit of Trello is having this be available on the mobile phone. So this is what it kind of looks like for the student. And for the most part, you know, students are using their cell phones to access the information. So this is what it looks like for them. You'll notice composition being right here. Okay, and of course, all of this updates automatically on the web. So as I update it, they see these updates on their phone. And this is, and it even maintains the same background. So if we compare the backgrounds here of the typewriter, it's the same as what it appears on the phone. And see, they can scroll over week to week and access the content very easily with their cell phone. And that you can, if you hold and click and drag, you can click and drag the cards around very easily as a teacher, not as the student, because I've shared this with students for them just to view the Trello website, so they're not able to edit. There are cases where you might create a board where you can have them be able to edit, and that's a whole nother dynamic. But these boards, you can have boards within boards, right? So I could have a board for my students to do some sort of task and embed that whole performance task as a board into my overall board for the course. Okay, so I won't get into that right now, but I just want to show you what the students see and what I see as a teacher, and how easy it is for it now, for example, changing the background and just kind of navigating throughout Trello with the phone is really a joy. It's super easy, very intuitive, very user-friendly. Here you have some options with calendars, like I just added this calendar and so on. So this is essentially Trello, and one of the things I'm kind of debating on right now is to what degree I want to use Trello. I'm fairly convinced I want to use Trello next semester, but I'm not sure if I'm going to use Google Classroom, because I almost see that this as a replacement of Google Classroom as well, and just maintain student documents in Trello itself. The last thing I want to share, PD, if I could, is in this first list, I have a card called Writer's Docs. And what I have here is an option to embed Google within the card. So here I've done it twice. I've done it as the syllabus. So here, this is an attachment of a document in Google that the students can access directly from the Trello card, and they can see the syllabus. And then the students can also access this open folder. This is a shared folder now within Google, where later I will add a list of all the student documents. And one of the things I always like to do in my class, in my writing classes especially, is to have students share their documents. And this is going to be a very easy way for them to share all of their documents with each other and with me. And I think having it set up this way, I like the integration of Trello and Google in this way. And this is just a few things that you can do. We haven't even talked about Twitter, or there's a Gantt chart that you can do if you're into Gantt charts. But just with Google alone and the calendar app, that it can also be linked to Google Calendar. There are many, many different ways to really streamline. I see streamlining the learning experience. Because for me, what I want to do is make it as easy as possible for me to, on the fly, share and organize my class with my students, so that it's very easy for them to see what we're doing at that particular time, what we've done in the past, and where we're going. And I think Trello, offering a bird's eye view like this, allows both me and my students to kind of see what we're doing and the activities that we're going to be doing. And again, just making it simpler as far as having students submit assignments and having the feedback, the way that I interact with my students, streamlining that as much as possible, making it easier for me as well. So basically, that's Trello in a nutshell. I don't know, Piry, if you have, if I missed anything or if you have something that wasn't clear.
No, it was really clear. I just have a question. You work in the cards, and then you can fix them up in the desktop view we had, but it automatically also fits into the calendar if you make it available. And I mean, you just work in one card. I mean, for each of the elements you're going to work with during the week, and then you just decide where it displays. I mean, you don't have to reorganize it again when you go to the calendar.
No, so let me give you an example and let me know if I answer your question. So let's say that I'm going to review the syllabus, and here you're going to have options to add dates. And I'm looking for it now. And I'm not sure, let's see. Okay, due date. So every card will allow you to set a due date. Now, by default, there are no due dates, right? So if you just create a card, it's not going to create a due date automatically, so therefore it won't appear in the calendar. But let's say that I want to set this, or I'm going to review the syllabus July 6th of this year, and I can either set a time or leave it the way it is, and I save it there. So review syllabus now has a due date, and I'll close this, and I'll immediately go now into the calendar. And if I scroll to, if I go to August, computers are a little slow here, so bear with me. If I go to calendar, and let's see, I go to August, now it appears here. Now this is exactly what the students are going to do as well, right? So because we're still in June, of course, I have to scroll forward, but ideally, you know, we're going to be in August, and or current, very close to the current dates. And as students open up this calendar, they can see, what they're doing, right? So you can decide as a teacher how much information you want to appear in the calendar, if it's going to be very, every single, activity, or if it's just going to be key or most important activities that you want to stress, or perhaps it's just assignments, right, that you want to include in the calendar. But you have control over to what degree, you want to share that information in a calendar form. And again, on their phones, it's so easy for them to go into that board and go to that calendar and see, okay, what's going on for today or for this week. And that's what I really like. You can do that in Canvas, but it's not as nearly as intuitive and quick and easy to get to. And again, I just like the layout. I like how this works, and both from the teacher standpoint and the student standpoint, just the easiness of this very basic, really, idea of, it actually comes from I think it's a Chinese kind of an idea, this Kanban idea, and a lot of businesses like the Toyota company back in the 80s and 90s incorporated this very simple Kanban idea of just staying organized. And it's really kind of a throwback to that idea of basically listing essentially to-dos. It's just a kind of a glorified to-dos list, if you will. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. I was the thing is that I'm having problems in reception here, and sometimes I hear you choppy. But yeah, I pretty much got my answer. What I see here is that this gives a lot of transparency to the way you are organizing and planning your classes. In other words, it's like giving me a view, a piece, really decipher how you're thinking for this semester somehow. You see?
Yeah, and
you see what I mean?
Yeah, and sometimes students get overwhelmed and going overwhelmed in the sense that they look at all of this, right? And they're like thinking that, I do all of this in one day or something, and I know that it can be overwhelming, but I think I'm trying to go back to the Canvas view here. The same idea here, if you compare the content, and this is just my personal opinion here, but if you look at this course, and I try to do the same thing in Canvas, where I try to put up, all the information for the class, what we're going to do, but they look at like the modules, for example, they're going to see everything that we're going to do essentially for the whole course right here. Now, of course, I'm constantly changing, adding, and taking away things, but they could very easily, for me, this is much more overwhelming, if you will, looking at all of this information, week 1 here, and then if I collapse this, week 2 and week 3, sorry, my computer's really slow today, but you'll notice these are all my weeks, right? It's just a different way of viewing all of the content. Wow, my computer is going crazy, but yeah, so here you'll notice these are all the weeks, right? So I can open up all of these and see all of the detail for each of those weeks. So it's comparing this type of view to this type of view. And I don't know, for me, as a teacher, first of all, I much prefer this way because of the colors.
It's a friendlier view.
Yeah, I can go in detail here if I click in to each of these cards. Okay, there I can find some more detail, right? But it doesn't give me all that detail at once, nor do I need it, nor do the students need it. They need to see more or less kind of where they're at. And as they learn also these color codes that I'm going to try to make explicit in the course, they're going to learn how these activities hopefully tie together. I mean, that's the whole point that I'm trying to make here, is that my activities and all the content that I'm doing, that it has some sort of logical flow to it, and it enables them to do more each week as they progress and increase their knowledge and skill in the subject. So this is one of the reasons why I really like Trello. Is actually it makes it easier, I think, and for me personally, more intuitive in the way that I plan. And I think once we get started, as things are invariably going to change, then I just change accordingly. I can just move these cards so easily, and most of the time I'm on my phone. I'm showing you mainly the desktop, but I spend 90% of my time on my phone. And all of this that I'm showing you now that I'm doing on my desktop, I can do. In fact, it's easier to do it on my phone. And that's what I really like. And that's what I like. I think the students are going to like just having that visual appeal in their own phone in terms of the course that they're taking with me.
Now, is there a way that that we can just have a view? I mean, me as a student, that I decide just to look at 1 week and I get rid of everything else and I just have a glance of the week?
To what I can do, and this is what I'm kind of debating on now, is like probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a system to move these cards. Like, so for example, the first week, it's going to appear like it is now. This week 1, the same way. Now, when I hit week 2, probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this week over here, okay? And then leave everything else the same. Week 3 comes along, I'm going to move week 3 over here. Now, why am I going to do that? Because probably in the phone, when they open up their phone, I want them to first see getting started, and I could decide later, maybe I'll move getting started over too. But by default, that the first list is going to be the current week. And they can see then the history. I still haven't decided, but I'm going to try that. I'm going to see how it works. To answer your question, I don't think there's one way to open up just a week view to my knowledge. And again, I could be completely wrong. If anyone's watching this and is an expert or knows more about Trello than I do, please post your comment. but I don't think there is a way to. Now, what you can do, Petey, and I think this is probably the best way to do this. Let me go back. You can watch. You can watch a list. Okay, so I'm going to click here, watch, and again, I'm just kind of experimenting at this point. If I go back to my view, my home view, there should be a way to have your watch. Let's
as
see,
a list,
as the current as the list that I just. I have got to play around with this, but I think the home. This is the purpose of the home is to include the watch. If I go down here, yeah, I don't see it, but yeah.
But there must be a way. But my point is that somehow I'm kind of a little bit more of simplistic. I like to have it as clean as possible with the just the exact information that may be needed for the current moment. So in a personal approach, I would rather prefer. I mean, it's really necessary sometimes to have these views with all the information, but maybe not at all time. And for example, in my personal preferences, I would rather go first through 1 week as simple as possible, just in the way to understand how it's organized and have a view. And then later on, having this view, I would know everything else is pretty much the same, and then I can have this wide view of everything else. But I mean, it's just a matter of focalizing, because if we have this whole week's view and you make emphasis on just one, obviously, well, you can focalize attention towards that. But yeah, that was pretty much the idea of having the view of a week, because somehow, for example, I don't know if you visit my sites, I try to keep it as clean as possible in every single page, like the minimum information required.
No, you're absolutely right, and I know the students feel the same way, and I think this is one of the things that I'm still learning about here with Trello. I know that there's a way to do this, and I think that what we're going to find that there's students are going to have preferences on how they really like to access this, and I think Trello is going to give you those options. If and again, this post here, this page here where it says highlights, I think is going to be where that's going to occur. But what I can't find here is where the watch, and that's what I'm still learning about, and I'll follow up with that later. But there has to be a way to view those watched lists that make it easier for the learner, for the user to access that information.
Yeah, just with the idea, and not exactly because of the list, because for example, what happens to me in Facebook when you have this scrolling down list is that there's a moment in which you are just fed up of looking at it never ends, right?
Yeah.
And I sometimes prefer just to have, I mean, if I'm looking for something, maybe not that specific, but to have a view of a beginning and an end at least. And that's why, I mean, just a preference, which I think sometimes students, there are some students which may be too overwhelmed by looking at. I mean, maybe there's not a lot of information, because right now this view that we are having right now in that view you had a moment ago, the kind of desktop, it's not really overwhelming. I mean, it's pretty simple if you take a look at it. But sometimes I sense students, just by looking at the size of the letter and the different colors and the amount of information, they just feel like, oh, what am I, or kind of lost. But just ideas. I mean, for
all good things to think about and things that I still need to work through before I start. But I think that when I clean up this home page, again, I keep coming back to this home page. I think this is like the news feed, if you will, right? This is where, like, I'm going to be posting, different ideas about what's going on. And yeah, that's like here, like stop watching here. I can like that. It looks like that what I don't see here is the syllabus that I just clicked on here, which should appear, I would think.
Oh,
But
now that we are, I mean, that we're taking time on this because I think it's kind of interesting to see how this works. I'm looking at the fact that you are having two writing groups, two different groups, right, for the
right.
following semester. And yeah, are you planning through this platform to have some interaction amongst these two groups, one to the other, like exchanging information or works or something?
Yeah, and I do that in all my classes, but I'm still looking at how that's going to work in Trello. But yes, I always in some way try to get both groups, because they're separate classes, right? Just for those who aren't familiar,
Right.
two different groups, two different classes. So I basically teach the same class to two different groups. And so the question is, do they have opportunities? Two different classes have opportunities to work together, and they do, primarily through Google Drive. But if I can extend that into Trello more through a conversational type of interaction, which is what I try to do, and have them interact more with each other, that's definitely what I want to try to do.
How do they do that in Google Drive? Do they work on the same project? Do they exchange works, or do they do teams from different groups, people, or what?
Yeah, so what they do is I'll set up a doc for each student, and I will do that myself. So before class starts, I will have already set up all these documents with the student's name, and I will share the document with them directly. So let me show you what that's going to look like here, because there's two things here that you're asking, and one of them is related to sharing with me, the teacher, and another is sharing with themselves, the students. So
with themselves, right?
So I've got one student here. So I've got a student, and I'm going to share this with the student. And my computer is very slow.
And yeah, I mean, you share with another person, but do they work on the same paper? Both of them put hands on that work, or each of them separately design a piece of it or put it together, or they just share it to read
Yeah,
it?
they partner. I have them choose a partner from the other class.
Okay.
And I have them share their work. So they will have already created maybe their first draft, and I will ask them to partner up with one member from the other group. And so they will share amongst themselves in a way that they are allowed to edit each other's work.
All right, good.
So it's not just for them to do each other's work, but it's actually, they can actually edit, they can go in and edit. But they don't necessarily edit, they just leave comments. So I have them go in, they check each other's work, they'll select a text and they'll add a comment. And I am very specific in the type of ways in which they can leave comments. For example, I'll ask them to leave 3 things that the student does well and 3 things that they need to consider. So it's very important that the things that they are to consider, let me back up, the things that they should consider and the things that they do well have to be based on feedback that I've already provided. Let me give you an example. So before I ask them to team up and start leaving comments and give each other peer feedback, I will have already shared a list of very specific grammatical and mechanical issues in writing, academic writing, that, and it's a long list. So subject verb agreement.
Yeah, like a code, right?
All of these things, right? So it's a long list of things. So I will have already talked to the whole student about the feedback. I don't go into their individual work and leave comments yet. The first step is for me just to give them, as a whole group, all of this laundry list of things to consider, for them to look at their own work to see, first of all, if they can, through self-assessment, identify those mistakes themselves. We go through that process. Then the second process after self-assessment is then the peer assessment, and that's where they share each other's work and they leave each other's comments about things that they do well and things that they need to consider. It's not like, oh, I like, you have a good title here, or I like this sentence. It has to be.
Now they go through the code, right?
Yeah, it has to be exactly. It has to be a list of things that we've already talked about. It can't be anything
Right.
else. And there could be other things that are wrong as well. But my job I see is in the first step is to identify the most serious types of errors, make that explicit to the whole group, and then use that as the basis for peer assessment later on.
Yeah, and so they pair up mostly for feedback and reading each other works and leaving comments and have this kind of interaction. My point in here, and that's why we kind of went through the academic aspect, I mean, the working aspect of the students, departing from the technological area. Like a long time ago, like 10 years ago, I was having a class, an online class, in which students interacted with the students from England. I had both groups. I was in England with the group, and I had the group here in Aguascalientes online. And the idea, and that's why my question was, the idea is that they interact in order to create products as pairs. They would choose a pair from Mexico and a pair from England, and they started to work on projects which will give them uh, products to each of them. The guys in England were having essays about the discussions and the dynamic, and the guys in Mexico were having uh, products like a menu card of a restaurant or something they create, right? In fact, I think I have a chapter of a book describing this. And my point is that back then, in that time, the platforms, I suppose there were platforms, but maybe I didn't know them. And what I decided to do is just to leave them up to them to decide how to make contact and how to interact, what technology to choose. Some of them were doing through email, some of them were doing through the messenger, some others were doing through Facebook, which in Mexico was not that in vogue in that time. But some of them started to use Facebook maybe because of that. And they decided how to do it. They didn't have problems to have this contact and delayed a lot in the tasks. Now that I see this with Trello and with the Canvas that we have talked before too, and Office 365 and all these platforms, I see they give us all this opportunity to make students work together and solve these kind of situations in which they can actually work to produce something together. That's why I was asking the question, and how if you have them work together, what kind of work they do, and the creative part from the teacher starts there, where you have to actually think on the kind of task and the kind of ideas that will make them actually work together. But it's not only about the task, it's also about the resources and the elements you provide around. Like right now, you're thinking about the platform itself, the organization of the platform, you're thinking about the code they're going to use. I mean, it's a mixture. That's the blending point of the technology and the academic aspect, exactly. And I think it's what I see here, what you have there is a nice idea and a good opportunity for the student.
Well, I'm curious, Peter, because we've talked about this. I know you use Facebook a lot and WhatsApp. I'm curious how your students kind of interact, and do they choose, and what kind of context do you think where Facebook and or WhatsApp types of apps really facilitate how they communicate?
It's a really, really interesting topic, and in fact, that was today's topic that I wanted to explore, to talk about WhatsApp and some of the things that I saw in the classroom with my students. Not from me; it was actually from teachers in training using these apps. I kind of recall some other examples that I had before, but not like the ones I've seen, and the situations that I saw that were created. A couple of things to talk about that, and I would like to leave it as an starting point to have this discussion in the following cast. Um, because there are many aspects that I would like to put on the table because it's not most more than a presentation of what happens, it raises a lot of questions. It raises a lot of I even detected different models that lead me to being of research that and what kind of activities, and I found articles too about it, some attempts with the use of WhatsApp specifically. But yeah, I would like to leave that conversation for a further show, because I know we have step up on time now, Ben.
Sorry. Sorry, it took a
No,
little.
it's okay. It's okay. I'm always I always like this dynamic, because you never know. I don't know if you feel sometimes like we talked about something, and there's a moment in which we don't know how to run out of it,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of things to say, and there are a lot of interesting aspects, and you never know which is the the comment or the that it's gonna really intrigue somebody, or have them consider certain aspect. On the other hand, there are sometimes in which we start discussing we don't on specific, but that's why I like it, and that's why today I would like to wait a little bit, because I know this WhatsApp and Facebook thing is going to raise a lot of questions more than and I would like to take the time to do it.
Well, I think one of the main points I wanted to make in today's discussion is that when you decide on technologies, you really have a reason for doing it. And I think that's the main point that I want to make is it's not just, oh, Trello, it looks cool, I'm going to try it and see,
Right.
without any prior notion of, well, how do I, want my students to communicate? How do I want the content to be delivered? All these questions that I talked about at the beginning needs to be part of the thought process, I think, before anyone really chooses the different types of technology, so that you have kind of a expectation from the beginning. Now that could change, of course, and
Right.
I'm probably more guilty than most about failing at technology. I mean, that's part of the part of the, I guess, the lure of looking at different technologies is knowing, yeah, there's possible success, but it could also fail, right? So you have to try to know yourself as a teacher, your own personal preferences as a teacher, the profile of your group, the resources that are available at your institution and in your context, and make those decisions accordingly, right? And try to find out what what works, and reflect as you go through the learning process and throughout the semester. But the main point I want to make is really trying to put a lot of thought into why you're choosing certain types of technology.
Right.
And these questions that you're asking me are very good questions that I still have yet to answer, that I need to answer before I ultimately decide on using Trello. Like the views, like how are students going to find those boards? Is it going to be too much for them
Perceive.
to look at? And those are all very good considerations that I still need to go through.
But Ben, but look at this. I mean, for example, on one side, I'm talking about the views because of my way of thinking or preferences or comes to my mind. But at the same time, on the other hand, I made the first comment I made is that I can have a glance of how your mind is working about this course. It's a dichotomy there,
Yeah.
where do I go? Because so maybe it's a matter of flexibility on the student. Yes, it's older and it's like that, and I suppose it's going to be really really helpful because it gives uh, transparent. I mean, I keep four main aspects about this. Everything you mentioned about Trello. Four main aspects academically for, and not only for Trello but for any other platform. One of them, and there's no order in the way I put them, but one of them is the flexibility. How much flexibility you have in the institution to begin with, in the use of technology and the resources you have available, but also how much flexibility you are giving to students. I mean, all of them are combined, right? And part of this flexibility is this aspect of um, how do I view this? What's my, in which way me as a student gonna digest a little bit better this, in a simplistic way, in a more elaborated way, in a wide view, and so I would go for the idea of flexibility in this. Another of the aspects I detected is the transparency aspect I mentioned. It gives a lot of transparency to the way you organize your class, but it gives a lot of transparency to the way you are thinking and elaborating and putting things on the table, which leads me to what I just said. It gives me a piece of your mind. I can have a view of how you are structuring this, and it may be clearer for me as a student where's the direction. I mean, we I can understand the goal, but there are going to be differences and variations on the way I interpret it. Now, looking at this organization, I can have kind of a closer view to the way you are interpreting and organizing this idea of the class. So that about transparency. So one is flexibility, the other one would be transparency. Then another one would be the feedback part. It's a constant feedback on everything, because beyond the organization, you're having the works there, and you're having also interactions amongst the students, teacher, students, and all these kind of interaction patterns that to feedback for students. Feedbacks, even in the small details that we may be focusing on the task, but the students may be focusing with this flexibility on the idea that, oh, I'm at this task and I'm still missing all of those others, and and I still need some time. I mean, all of these aspects come together. So flexibility, transparency, feedback, and the last one I have, which I think it's one of the key aspects that you mentioned since the very beginning in the way, and the idea of selecting the platform is the between the kind of interaction that are going to happen during the semester and the goals themselves. And this is still a lot in training. You may focusing a little bit more on the goal at the beginning, or a little bit more on the interaction at the beginning. But at the end, or whatever you start your planning and organization, they have to be aligned. The kind of interactions that happens in the classroom be proper to lead students to including and this is why I mentioned this at the end, interaction leading goals. But this interaction may take into consideration the other three aspects: the flexibility, the feedback you can have, and the transparency, and not only from the teacher, but transparency amongst each other. So because you don't know where the learning is going to come from, whether the famous click is going to happen. Maybe it's never going to be with the teacher. Maybe the click is going to be when feedback, or maybe the click is going to be when I'm reading what I'm presenting at the end. So I think it was a very enriching talk, not only because of the platform, but because of the all of the elements that we can appreciate. And I would keep these four, and I'm gonna keep this paper for writing it down and composing it, because I think there may be more aspects, but personally, I would keep these four elements: the flexibility, the transparency, the feedback, and the interaction and goals in that way, in order to consider the platform that I'm going to use for the semester.
And one thing I would add, especially to your feedback part of those elements that you just mentioned, is the potential feedback that you can achieve if you open up your boards in this way from other educators, right? So other educators who are in business or academic writing are going to be able to either follow this board, they can watch or follow this board themselves as well, and they can provide feedback to me and ask questions or even disagree or whatever. But I, as a teacher, am open then to receiving feedback from others, experts in this field, and that obviously feeds into my own learning as well. So it's one of those things where you have to really look at your own teaching preference and see what you're comfortable with. Also, obviously, depends on the age level of the group and maturity level. And I mean, there's a lot of variables here to take into consideration. But for my purposes, I wanted to share this and hopefully stimulate some discussion. If you're watching this video, either live or watching the recording, let us know what you're using. What technologies are you planning on using next semester? What types of technology have worked for you? Which technologies have been a struggle or a challenge for you? Those I think are very, very important so that we can all kind of learn and get information from each other about different ways that we're using educational technology. So, Piry, I think we're about at an hour here. So,
Yeah.
I think we can go ahead and sum up here. And yeah, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and let us know what topics you want to use. The new Trello Teacher Learning Cast Trello now is available. You can access it through Facebook, and let us know. There's a space there that you can add comments. I made that board open, so anyone can go in and leave comments to any one of the cards. There's one list that is available precisely for possible topics, and that's where you can share your feedback if you want and leave us ideas about what you would like for us to talk about. Of course, you can leave comments in Facebook as well, and we take all those into consideration in our own planning for future teacher learning broadcasts.
Yes, thank you, Ben. It was a really interesting talk. I want to thank also everybody that is watching or that will watch in the on-demand video. And we'll keep on doing these talks, which every time they're really interesting and they bring a lot of things to mind. And we invite you to join us every time you want.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you in the next broadcast.
Right. Thank you. Keep on learning, everybody.